Well, good morning, everyone. I can't tell you how pleased I'm starting my stopwatch. How pleased I was when I had a call from Fran Cherry telling me about the 60th anniversary and the program, and I thought, boy, I'll be delighted to go to that. She didn't tell me I was going to have to work. But I had a ball last night meeting with former colleagues, current members of faculty whom I had never met, and former students. June, when I saw June on the program, I called her a couple of weeks ago just to get reacquainted because it's been a long time. And we spend a lot of time with our students while they're here working on their thesis work, and then it ends abruptly. In most cases, that's it. You don't see anybody anymore. I remember one MA student I had, when she left, she said, "I'm going to write to you every week, Tom." Never heard from her. I have no idea where she is. And that's a long time ago. I'm going to briefly review my career, but I want to start with my last term in graduate school at Iowa. I, of course, was sending out job applications, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, came a letter from Loyola College in Montreal offering me a job to start a department. I hadn't applied to Loyola. I had no idea how anybody at Loyola knew that I was in graduate school. How'd they know what graduate school I was in? Or how did they possibly know I was graduating? I had no idea. Well, my wife came from Montreal, and I went to high school in Montreal, Loyola College High School. And we were quite excited at the prospect of reuniting with all our old friends. And my wife was really excited. And unfortunately, I reasoned that if they were hiring somebody for that job with zero experience, they were making a big mistake, and I turned it down. Amongst my job applications was the University of Toronto, because there was somebody there I thought I would like to collaborate with. And instead of hearing from Toronto, I had a call from Mary Wright, chair at Western, saying that they were interested in offering me a job, and would I come for a visit? I hadn't applied to Western. I didn't know they had an opening. And I told her that I was waiting to hear from Toronto. Perhaps we could arrange a joint visit so I wouldn't have to take two trips, because I was still in school full time, and I didn't want to waste my time. She said, Roger Myers and I, Roger's chairman of Toronto, she and Mary were bosom buddies. Roger and I have decided you should go to Western. And that's where I went. So I'm way ahead of myself here. I spent 3 years at Western, during which I developed my child psychology courses and continued with the program of research and frustration in children, which I had started in graduate school at McMaster and then later on at Iowa. Halfway through my first year at Western, out of the blue, came a letter from Loyola College offering me the job of becoming chairman of the department and starting a department. Again, we got excited for a little bit, and then I reasoned, well, if they're offering this to somebody with half a year experience, they're making a big mistake. And I turned it down. My wife told me, if they write to me again, don't tell me. I'm quite convinced to this day that had I accepted that job, it would have totally ruined my career. You would have been in that position 8 to 10 years, maybe building a department, then come back to the department with no track record in research or anything. It would have been a disaster. Coming to Carleton was a fluke. And in June 1965, I attended a CPA convention in Montreal. I took my family. And on the way home, we stopped in the Gatineau Park and camped at Lac Philippe for a week. With 165 kilometers of trails and several lakes, we had an absolute ball. My poor children were 4 and 5. I think they believe to this day they walked all 165 kilometers. Well, we decided at the end of the week that this is where we wanted to live. And I have lived adjacent to the Gatineau Park for the last 47 years. But now I needed a job. And I have to say, my generation had it the best, the easiest. You could decide, first of all, where would I like to live? Now, where would I choose to work? The Ottawa universities were hiring, the school boards, the hospitals. And fortunately for me, I already knew 3 people at Carleton. Bill Walther, Marilyn Marshall were 1 year ahead of me in graduate school at Iowa. And when they had job offers from Carleton, I remember talking to them about Ottawa. And Peter McCormick, who had been there for a while, I knew pretty well. I'd met him at 3 CPA conventions. We had him at Western for a colloquium. And so I called Peter, told him of my interest. A visit was arranged, and within a very few weeks, I had a job here starting July 1966. During my first several years as a professor here, I continued with my usual teaching, research, and advising duties, and I continued with my frustration research. And I remember to this day how impressed I was with the quality of the students that I encountered here. And I think that's probably only got better, except for June. You can't get better than June. Then, as I was merrily going along, out of the blue, I thought I'd catch someone with that one. It's not Loyola. I was contacted by the Vanier Institute of the Family and the Economic Council of Canada to come to a meeting at which they asked if I would undertake to prepare a major report on poverty and children in Canada. This required a year's leave of absence from Carleton, intensive work schedule, but we did produce the report within a year, and that became a book published in 1972 called Poverty and Children, a Canadian Study. I think I have the title right. I don't have a copy of it anymore, so I couldn't check. Back in the department, my research interest changed to early childhood development, and that was influenced by my work on the poverty report. I really wanted to focus on early childhood. But suddenly, things changed when our chair, Rusty Wendt, had a heart attack. And in a very short time, I had a new job as chairman of the department. One of the difficult tasks I encountered very early was to fill 8 positions. And I wondered, well, what do we need? What do we need? Then I said, well, what do we have? What do we have here? What are these faculty members that we have here now doing? I don't remember exactly how big we were. David, you might? 15, 14?
It would be about that.
But around 14, 14 people. But I didn't know what they were doing. But I discovered a wonderful document. It's called Research and Studies, which listed the teaching and research interests of every member of faculty in the university. And I read it. And I was amazed and I was impressed as I read through the psychology section to realize how good we really were. I set up an annual interview with each individual to get their views on where they were at, where they thought they were going, and where they thought the department should improve or change. I will never forget, and I'll always be indebted to members of the department for all the help they gave to me everywhere along the way. A few years later, I became dean of the faculty, and now I had to know something about political science, economics, geography, social work, business, public administration, international affairs. Again, Research and Studies proved to be an invaluable document for me to get to know who the heck I was working with and what the heck they were doing. I'll never forget, this involved about 225 professors at that point. I don't know what it is today. When I walked into the dean's office my very first day, I had no idea what to do. I felt entirely clueless. So my office, by the way, was President Dunton's old office, which is the size of a football field. A bathroom, sofa, chair, comfortable chairs, a little room in the back where you could hide if you wanted to be private. And you could also sneak out a back door. So I put my feet up on the desk and I stared out at the Rideau River. Sorry, I live near the Gatineau River. And I just thought well, what a wonderful job this is. Then the phone rang. It was Dennis Forsyth, chair of sociology, asked me a question on some faculty union issue. I said, Dennis, I haven't a clue. I'll get back to you. So I called our labor lawyer. I had the problem resolved within minutes, called Dennis back. He was very impressed with how prompt I was in my response. And little did he know that I had absolutely nothing else to do. Needless to say, the phone kept ringing, and the meeting started, and the calendar became more than full, and you were running constantly. Vice President Academic is simply the Dean of the Deans. That's all there is to it. Except that I now had, in addition to Faculty of Social Sciences, Faculty of Engineering, along with Industrial Design and Architect, and I learned that the architects are absolutely insane, and the Faculty of Science. And this was now about 750 professors that were teaching here. I continued reading research and studies, but I never got through all 750, I have to confess. But I realized that I didn't have to come up with any ideas about anything other than to learn how to use the tremendous talent that we had spread across the university. That's where it's going to come from. The university is going to thrive from the ideas that come bottom up, not from the top down. You can't as the head of an academic program, think that you can stimulate some kind of development in transport engineering or something which you don't know anything about. So it all comes from down below. And the most stressful time for me, and I still dream about it, by the way, was finding the money to support the new courses and the new programs that had been stimulated by individuals, by departments, and successfully pushed through Senate. When you develop a new program, like it's the greatest idea in the world, that doesn't mean that there's any money for it. And we were going through the time then when the Ontario government had become much more stringent. Times were tough, and those older members in the audience here will probably remember the stringencies of the 1980s when Carleton kept threatening Betty Stevenson, our president, Bill Beckel. I'm just going to go to Toronto and bring her the keys for Carleton and say, you run it on the budget that you provided for us. He never did that. I will be forever indebted to help I was given by members of the faculty across the whole university. The vice president is called upon to do all kinds of things. Here's an example. We were running a conference in industrial design, and the theme was the brain and the computer. Would I come and introduce the conference? I said, okay. I didn't want to do what you often hear somebody come and say, well, we have so many thousand students, we have so many programs, we have so many acres, we have so many buildings. It's totally boring. So I asked somebody, this is because I knew my faculty. I knew a musician whom I asked to write this introduction for me, Brian Tansley. I said, I want to know why this conference is significant. What is the significance of the brain and the computer? And what are we going to try to accomplish with a conference like this? My introduction was brilliant. And I had never experienced having people come and compliment me on introducing something or somebody. It was absolutely brilliant what he had written for me. And I should have told him that last night because I thought he might be here this morning and I was going to just say thank you, Brian, but I'll tell him another day. One thing I never did tell him, and this is confidential, don't tell Brian, is took me half a day to translate it into English. But it was great. Introducing guest speakers We have many public lectures at Carleton, as you know. And often they want the vice president, head of the academic program, to come and introduce somebody. And there was one in economics. I had no idea what the title meant. And I approached Ted English, the late Ted English, to write my introduction for me. Again, it was brilliant. I had people come and thank me, praise me for my introduction. I said, thank you very much, thank you very much. One of the most interesting ones I had was an honorary degree recipient, Peter Ustinov. And I thought, well, I've seen this guy in a movie once, I think. What am I going to say about him? Then, professor in our French department, Jacques Van Vlasser. Do I have that name right? Yeah. Van Vlasser. Was a personal friend of Peter Ustinov and often went to Europe to visit him. He wrote it for me. I had no idea of this man's contribution to children in the world and all the work he had done with UNESCO. And this is what the presentation highlighted, and this is why we were offering him an honorary degree. Again, my presentation was absolutely brilliant. I want to tell you about, I also did eulogies and other public things that other people wrote for me. One bad day I had, we were being donated a $1 million computer from Honeywell Bull. And the president of Honeywell was going to make the presentation. I was going to make the response. Unfortunately, on the day in question, I attended 2 outdoor convocations in the boiling sun. And by the end of the second one, I think I had a bit of a sunstroke. I was really woozy. And I had asked the head of computer science to write my response for me. And I wanted him to outline, we had a long history with Honeywell, of Honeywell giving us hardware and Carleton giving Honeywell software. And tit for tat, and we both improved our corporations in that way. Anyway, as I was walking from convocation to the Dunton 21st floor in the Dunton Tower, or 20th, I thought, he hasn't given me my speech. And I finally, as I walked in the door, he said, here's your speech, Tom. I said, thank you, put it in my pocket. The presentation was made, and I got up, and I looked at the paper. It was light gray print on light beige paper, and I was dizzy, and I couldn't see it. So I struggled through it. I fumbled my way through that presentation. And Sid Wise, our then Dean of Graduate Studies, said to me on the way out, Tom, I bet you never saw that speech before. That was true. I did a similar thing to poor President Beckel. Every 2 years, I had initiated a meeting to which we invited all former presidents, vice presidents, and deans. And the president gave them an uptake on the academic developments and academic program. Well, the only good speech the president ever gave on the academic program was written by me, because he didn't know much about it. One day, his daughter walked into my office and said, I just went to ask my dad about a problem with my program here, and I don't know what to do. Her dad said, that's easy, go see Tom Ryan. He left the academic matters where it belonged in the academic division as he carried out very well his presidential duties. Well, on this day in question, I had been extremely busy. He didn't receive his speech till he walked into the Senate chamber. And that was a dirty trick to play on him, but it was the best I could do. I said, here's your speech, Bill. And I could see, I was really admired him as his eyes were 2 lines ahead of his mouth coming down the page. Because he had no idea, it was a 14-page speech, and he had absolutely no idea what was coming next. I didn't even know if he knew what he was talking about when he actually said something. But we pulled that one off. Well, after 14 years of not being in a classroom, I returned to the psychology department for 3 years. Fortunately, I had a year's leave to prepare. I really needed it. I didn't know anything anymore. And I worked harder than when I was in graduate school trying to prepare for these last 3 years. But I was so happy to have an opportunity again to interact with normal students. Those administrative jobs, you interact with the cream of the crop, the student leaders and the dregs. Dealing with student leaders was an absolute delight, and dealing with the dregs was not, but was necessary. And I was thrilled to be in an honors seminar with sharp third-year honors students, and we only had about, I don't know how big your classes are today. I've been gone for 22 years. I had 18 or 19 students, and everyone was a delight to be with. They were all sharp. It was just great. My research at that time was on teacher-child interactions in preschool programs, whereby our independent variables were socioeconomic status of the child, gender, and physical attractiveness. And the dependent variables were teacher instructional contacts, social contacts, and disciplinary contacts. You sum it all up. If you're a physically attractive middle-income female, you had the most instructional contacts and social contacts, the fewest disciplinary contacts. If you were physically less attractive, low-income male, disciplinary contacts. And we had questionnaires with the teachers where they told us what they were intending to do. We compared that with what they did, and we were able to give valuable feedback to teachers. Whoops, 21 minutes. I'll sum that up by saying that although I enjoyed my whole career at Carleton, every bit of it, I loved it, it was these last 3 years that I enjoyed the most, and I left in a very happy state. Thank you.